South China Sea is about more than ships and scientific instruments. It is a test of law and sovereignty, of regional influence and strategic calculation. What began in official language as an allegation about marine research has quickly become a wider signal. A public back and forth that mixes legal claims, operational deployments, and the sort of careful posturing that can, in the wrong moment, spiral into something far more dangerous. Philippine authorities say they observed multiple vessels they identify as Chinese conducting marine scientific operations inside waters Manila regards as part of its exclusive economic zone. The Philippine Coast Guard described the activity as a breach of international maritime rules, invoking the protections and procedures found in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. In a statement that marks a clear shift in posture, the Coast Guard's leadership warned they would act to prevent unauthorized work. As Admiral Ronnie Gil-Gavigan put it, "We will not tolerate any illegal marine scientific research conducted without our government's consent. We are deploying aircraft and vessels to challenge and drive away these unauthorized vessels to protect Philippine sovereignty and sovereign rights." That sentence is more than words on a page. It signals operation intent, aerial and maritime assets dispatched to confront activity deemed unauthorized. It marks a move away from purely diplomatic protest and toward visible physical assertion of claims. Whether the ships were conducting benign oceanography or something else is in some respects beside the point. In a sea of overlapping maps and contested boundaries, the mere presence of foreign research platforms can be read as both scientific inquiry and strategic positioning. China's response has been to push back with its own accusations, framing Philippine actions as problematic and pointing to alleged activities by Philippine personnel on disputed features. This tit-for-tat is familiar in the South China Sea. Action prompts counter-accusation, patrol follows patrol, each side insisting it is acting within its rights while denouncing the other. The dynamic creates a repetitive, friction-prone pattern. Small incidents that, taken together, trace a long-term intensification in the contest for presence and influence. To understand why a research vessel can look threatening, it helps to step back and look at what's at stake. The South China Sea is a maritime artery of global commerce, a vital conduit for energy and goods. It is one of the world's richest fishing grounds in a region long suspected of holding significant hydrocarbon and mineral resources. It is also a complex patchwork of sovereignty claims. Littoral states, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and Taiwan, lay claim to portions of its waters and features, while China asserts extensive historical rights and keeps a prominent presence across wide areas. Legal frameworks matter here. For the Philippines, international law, including a 2016 arbitration decision that rejected sweeping Chinese claims based on historical maps, is the legal foundation for its maritime entitlements. China, however, does not accept that ruling and has continued to assert what it describes as historical rights across large stretches of the sea. That legal divergence is more than academic. It is the fault line along which everyday operations, fisheries enforcement, scientific surveys, patrols, and construction become political and security flashpoints. Marine scientific research occupies a particularly ambiguous space. On paper, oceanography, seabed mapping, and environmental sampling are civilian activities that advance knowledge about currents, ecosystems, and resource distribution. In practice, the data they collect, precise bathymetry, seabed composition, subsurface profiles, can be instrumental to navigation, to the planning finds undersea cables and pipelines, and to the placement of infrastructure. For coastal states that fear erosion of their rights, any foreign effort to map, sample, or measure within their claim zone raises the question: who benefits from the information and how might it be used in the future? That is the calculus driving Manila's response. For a government seeking to protect maritime rights, the default is increasingly to insist on prior consent. The line is straightforward. Without express authorizations, such activities are treated as unauthorized intrusions. The operational follow-through, aircraft and vessels sent to monitor, to intercept, to document, and if necessary, to drive away, is how that policy is enforced in real time. From Beijing's perspective, the pattern looks different. China emphasizes sovereignty and territorial integrity and has, in recent years, sustained a layered presence in contested areas through Coast Guard patrols, maritime militia activity, research made, scissions, and naval deployments. Beijing describes such operations as routine, necessary for protection and law enforcement. It also watches regional military cooperation with caution. Joint exercises that bolster coordination between the Philippines and partner states are seen by China as external intervention in a regional dispute, and they are watched closely for signs of expanding influence or operational reach. The current episode arrives against that broader backdrop and as a moment of heightened regional activity. Manila has been engaged in joint exercise and capacity building with partners aimed at strengthening maritime domain awareness and response capabilities. Those exercises serve bilateral and multilateral objectives, improving interoperability, deterring miscalculation, and signaling commitment to the defense of territorial claims. But for Beijing, such activity is itself another data point in a strategic calculus, raising sensitivity to any external presence mere dispute. TED features what follows from these converging behaviors is a narrowing of operational space. When both sides increase the frequency and visibility of their maritime activity, encounters become more likely. Each patrol, each sortie, each research cruise is an opportunity for observation and for challenge. Each challenge produces a reactive movement by the other side, which in turn is interpreted as escalation. Over time, the theatre of maritime contest becomes not just a place for one-off incidents, but a continuous environment of low-level tension. The Philippine claim in this instance was not simply a diplomatic protest. It was accompanied by the deployment of assets intended to change the situation on the water. That operational choice comes with both risks and rationales. The risk is obvious. Close encounters at sea can lead to miscommunication, accidents, or deliberate provocation. The rationale for such a posture is equally clear, without demonstrable enforcement declarations. Of sovereignty risk becoming words without consequence. Presence in contested waters, whether through non-combatant Coast Guard vessels, aerial patrols, or diplomatic escorts, is how states translate legal claims into practical control. China's counter-accusations about Philippine activities on disputed features complicate the narrative and underline the reciprocal nature of the contest. Each side frames the other as the one that acts without regard for established rules, even as both claim to be upholding sovereignty and international law. In such a contest, the existence of shared rules or predictable incident management mechanisms becomes critically important, where clear, mutually recognized protocols exist. Small disputes can be contained, where they do not routine activity carries the potential to ignite broader conflict. That is why many analysts and diplomats point to the value of communication channels and confidence-building measures, hotlines between Coast Guard or NAV, L commands, mutual notification protocols for research activity, and agreed standards for intercepts and shadowing can reduce risk. A code of conduct for the South China Sea, long discussed among regional actors, remains an aspiration for many precisely because it promises to translate general legal principles into operational behavior. But such instruments require political will and often involve long, cumbersome negotiations, especially when the underlying territorial disagreements are themselves unresolved. For the states on the front line, the calculation is immediate and visceral. The Philippines must weigh the domestic and international political costs of appearing weak against the risks of escalating a confrontation with a far larger neighbor. China must balance the desire to assert what it calls historical rights with the imperative to manage relations with neighboring capitals and to avoid entangling incidents with extra-regional powers. Each decision is taken under the scrutiny of domestic audiences, allied partners, regional neighbors, and international observers, and each carries consequences for perception and future behavior. Inside this calculus, scientific research becomes a fulcrum. Research platforms, acoustic survey vessels, and even civilian contractors can be perceived as instruments that, if left unchecked, provide others with a detailed picture of a coastal state's maritime approaches, seabed topology, and potential vulnerabilities. That is why states ask for, and often require, formal approval before foreign teams enter their exclusive economic zones to conduct surveys. The requirement is not unique to the Philippines. It is common practice where sovereign teams or resorts concerns are involved. What differs, and what makes this situation combustible, is the overlay of disputed claims and competing interpretations of where those zones begin and end. A second layer to the problem is the multiplicity of actors operating at sea, national coast. Guards, naval vessels, research ships, private contractors, and even maritime militia units can all be present in the same vicinity. Their differing mandates, rules of engagement, and command structures can create confusion in moments of contact. And because these actors operate under the flags and legal regimes of different states, attribution and accountability become contested and messy. So what might de-escalation look like in practical terms? At a minimum, it requires that actors on all sides take conscious steps to reduce misreading and miscalculation. That means clear, consistent public messaging that avoids inflammatory rhetoric. It means transparency about intended activities. It means robust on-scene documentation and communication when intercepts take place. It also means working through diplomatic channels to address violations or allegations promptly, rather than allowing them to fester in the public domain, where they contribute to a heightened security narrative. In this medium term, the region needs operational rules that map to the realities of overlapping claims and dense maritime traffic. Agreed norms for vessel interactions, standardized reporting of research activities, and incident prevention protocols tailored to the South China Sea's unique geography would all help. But such frameworks are political projects as much as technical ones. They require states to accept some degree of mutual constraint and to recognize that unilateral assertions of control generate reciprocal responses. There are also deeper strategic currents to consider. Beyond the immediate contest between Manila and Beijing, the South China Sea has become a theatre where external powers' interests intersect with regional disputes. Naval deployments, capacity-building programs and defence partnerships change the local balance of power and introduce additional variables into an already crowded operational picture. For the Philippines, relationships with allies and partners are, part of the deterrence and reassurance toolkit. For China, efforts to reduce external influence on what it considers a core maritime interest are a consistent priority. These intersecting aims are not mutually exclusive of the kinds of localized, day-to-day management that would prevent accidents, but they do complicate the political environment in which such measures are negotiated. Where distances are measured in nautical miles and time is measured in contact watches, the immediate consequence of this dispute is likely to be more frequent encounters. Research vessels conducting surveys, Coast Guard ships shadowing and challenging them, aerial patrols documenting activity from above. Each encounter will be photographed, recorded, and replayed in public statements and national media, feeding domestic narratives about sovereignty, defense, and national pride. That public dimension constrains leaders, often making it harder to climb down from confrontational rhetoric without appearing to concede. Still, there is room for careful, deliberate diplomacy. Back-channel discussions, multilateral forums, and third-party mediation have roles to play in clarifying misunderstandings and framing long-term solutions. Regional institutions can help institutionalize practices that reduce friction.
Scientific communities themselves can be part of the answer by creating transparent frameworks for collaborative research that include host state approval, joint data sharing arrangements, and third-party oversight.
Arrangements that separate legitimate scientific inquiry from covert collection of strategic intelligence. For now, the immediate message from Manila is unmistakable. Activities within waters it claims will be closely monitored, and operations deemed unauthorized will be challenged. That posture reflects a broader trend in which coastal states are more willing to translate legal claims into operational presence. Whether that leads to greater stability or to tension depends on how both sides calibrate their responses, how effectively communication channels are used, and whether third parties can help reduce the temptation to retaliate in kind. The South China Sea remains a focal point of regional dynamics where law, power, and national interest intersect. Even scientific operations in these waters can carry strategic weight. In a dispute defined by overlapping maps and competing interpretations, every movement at sea becomes a statement about intent and resolve. As the situation evolves in the days and weeks ahead, what matters most is not only what is said in official communiques, but how those words are translated into actions at sea, actions that can either stabilize a volatile status quo or push it toward a more dangerous confrontation. This is a story still unfolding, a maritime contest that will continue to be shaped by claims and counterclaims, by patrols and research cruises, by diplomatic notes and operational choices. In that contest, clarity of purpose, restraint in action, and channels for communication are the small tools that can prevent a bad encounter from becoming a crisis. For the moment, the ships are where the dispute is being made real, and the work of managing it will require both vigilance and a steady hand.